Hello and welcome to Read, Think, Act. In today's episode, we welcome Dolen Perkins-Valdez to answer questions on writing, inspiration, historical trauma, and reproductive justice in the US.
So I think whenever we're writing anything that's painful, particularly painful histories, it's really important to take care of ourselves as writers. I post a lot of self-care tips on my social media, and I take self-care really seriously. And I think it's important to pay attention to our own emotional health when we are writing. One of my friends who's a therapist says that an important thing for therapists is to stay close to their own therapists at all times so that, they're just making sure they're healthy. So the second thing I would say is that I'm really inspired by previous writers who've worked through really painful histories, writers such as Gail Jones, the author of Corregidora, Toni Morrison, who took us through very, very painful books such as Beloved and The Bluest Eye, Yaa Gyasi, who wrote a book called Homegoing. I really believe that these writers have laid the groundwork for many of us, and I'm inspired by their work. And I think about them when I get to those points in my writing process where I'm trying to figure out how to push forward and get it done. And I think about their own commitment to truth telling, even when that truth telling is a little bit uncomfortable for the reader. Well, I hope that the story inspired by that Relf case will remind us that the most vulnerable members of our population will be the people most adversely affected by this potential ruling coming out of the US Supreme Court. Poor women, women of color, disabled women, women without resources, women who cannot travel across state borders and national borders to get access to reproductive health care. I think it's going to be really important that we keep those women in the community at the center of this conversation, and that this isn't just a conversation happening in ivory towers among academics and authors and intellectuals, that we make sure that this is a dialogue across sections of the population. And I think it's really important that we understand that even though we need the partnership of men, and we need the support of men in all of our quests for reproductive justice, we do have to keep it in mind that this is a conversation that needs to have women at its center. And that, I think, often gets lost. So you would think that would be a no-brainer, but I often turn on the television and there are all men talking about this. So I think it's really important for us to remember that women, or those of us, who have reproductive organs, are at the center of this conversation. Well, I have an entire list here in the United States. We have, dozens of them, and most of them are organized on the ground locally in communities. Some of them are organized among affinity groups, such as the Black Mamas Matter Alliance. We also have some that are physicians for reproductive health. New Voices for Reproductive Justice is sort of coalition of a lot of different organizations. Social Workers for Reproductive Justice, Native American Women's Health Education Resource Center. We have quite a few. We also have them sort of geographically located. We have a New York Women's Forum. So I think here in the United States, the term reproductive justice was coined by a group of Black feminists at a conference in 1994 in Illinois. And that term is quite expansive. It means much more than just terminating a pregnancy. It also refers to access to reproductive health care. It refers to the right to raise a child in a safe and healthy environment. It refers to the possibility of a woman choosing not to be a mother at all, who just doesn't want to be a mother, and removing the stigma of that. So here in the US, when we think about reproductive justice, it encompasses a lot of what we talk about when we talk about reproductive health care.